Hi, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. So thank you for your patience. My name is Chloe Leo, and I'm a fourth-year psych major, currently working as a senior event coordinator for the Economics Career Office. And I'm joined by Jen Jones, the ECO director, as well as John Williams, who is joining us from SEO Career, the nation's premier free professional development program for recruiting and training high-achieving undergraduates for paid summer internships. So this panel will be moderated by UVA Economics alumni Marshay Clarke, who is a go-to market and strategy operations manager at Google, as well as the CEO and founder of Buzzoms, a women's apparel company focused on offering both style and support. Marshay graduated, worked for JP Morgan right out of UVA before returning to Columbia with a full merit scholarship to earn her MBA. And since then, she's worked as a media spokesperson for big outlets like NBC News, Bustle, and Yahoo Finance. Marshay will share a little bit more information about her background in a bit, but we are so glad to have her here. We're really excited to be hosting today's first ever Young Black Perspectives on Navigating Your Career panel, featuring 3 of our very own economics alumni. So I'd like to extend a huge thank you to our panelists, Adrienne, Gregory, and Omer, for joining us as well. So a little bit more about the ECO's background. We were launched in April of 2013 when our director, Jen Jones, was hired to work just a few days a week by then Econ chairperson, Professor Charlie Holt. And the ECO was established thanks to the leadership of Professors Ken Elzinga, Charlie Holt, Ed Burton, John Pepper, and Lee Kopic, many of which you guys may know. These faculty envisioned a career services office that focused on the career development of our majors, and as our bandwidth allows prospective majors as well. So they approached alumni, parents, and friends of the department, and these contributions made the ECO a reality. Now the 20 to 30 programs that we have a year, along with our advising services and other programming, are a result of their vision, leadership, and generosity. And clearly that generosity does not stop there, because we have so many invested alumni that are willing to come to events like these and offer their point of view and expertise. So before we get started, a little bit more about the program, please, if you can, turn your videos on. We'd love to see your faces, but keep your mics off. Casual dress is totally fine, and we will be recording this session. And later in the panel, we'll open up to a student Q&A. So students, if any questions arise, you can send them directly to Marshay in the chat. And we'll conclude the panel at 1 p.m., at which time Gregory and Adrienne will stay back for office hours. So we do have some office hours slots available. So if you are interested, you can send me a direct message in the chat and I will coordinate that for you. Without further delay, I will once again welcome our guests and launch this talk by turning it over to Marshay to moderate. Marshay, if you could start us off by telling us a little bit more about your background, we'd love to hear that.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the intro, Chloe. I'm excited to be here, excited to see everyone. Happy Friday. Before we get started, I'm Marshay. My background, I graduated from UVA in 2014, so it was some time ago. But since then, I've worked in banking and finance and in tech. I recently graduated from Columbia Business School, and now I'm working at Google, and I also own my own company. So I'm excited to be here, excited to be speaking with an amazing set of panelists. We have Adrienne, Gregory, and Omer, and they each will tell you a little bit about themselves. Also, if you guys want to put in the chat, your name, your class, and your favorite season. We're coming into fall now, so we can talk a little bit about that and the weather. But just to liven it up a bit, let us know what you're studying. So before we get started, I just wanted to reinforce the fact that this is collaborated, with ECO and with SEO. Fun fact: I also was a part of SEO when I was a student at UVA. My first internship with JP Morgan, I got with the help of SEO. So I really, really love that program, and I'm happy that they are sponsoring this event. So without further ado, I'll start with this, having each panelist introduce yourself. If you wouldn't mind just giving us a skim of your resume, what you were doing while you were a student and your career trajectory since then, that would be great. And we can, whoever wants to go first can kick it off.
I can start. This is Omer. Thanks so much, Marshay, for the introduction. I'm happy to be here and happy to meet all of you and kind of share some insight on whatever I can provide. I went to UVA and I graduated in 2018. I was in a few different organizations, but I studied foreign affairs, international relations mainly. And I took a lot of econ courses. And basically after that, after graduation, I went straight into Merrill Lynch and to a brokerage office here in Manhattan. And then after about a year, moved roles into what I'm doing right now, which is the Global Wealth and Investment Management Strategy Team at the Bank of America Tower. So it's a little bit about me. I'm sure I will get into more later, but everyone else can kind of go.
Yeah, I can jump in. Hi, everyone. I'm Adrienne. I graduated in 2020, so not that far out from you guys. I was an econ major and a psych major. And while I was there, I also was a part of the Econ Career Office Student Advisory Board, so helped put on some events like this as well. And I also was a part of, or I also interned with the internship placement program that placed me in a communications intern in the provost office, which helped launch my career in HR. And then after I graduated, I started working as a workforce transformation associate. So a fancy way of saying HR consulting for PwC, which I'm about to hit my 1-year anniversary there this year or next month.
Good afternoon. I hope everyone's having a wonderful Friday. My name is Greg Johnson, and I graduated from UVA in 2018 with a major in econ and a minor in stat. I've been working at BRG, which is in the economic consulting industry for the last 3.5 years now. I specialized in our healthcare analytics practice, and we started working with our private equity team that works in health.
Awesome. So we have banking, we have consulting, a little bit of healthcare consulting too. So it's like a really good mix, of what you can do with the econ degree. So can you help me figure out, talk more about how you landed in your specific role? What made you interested in your role and how did you get there? Maybe Adrienne, we can start with you since you're the most recent grad.
Yeah, well, what I mentioned before with the internship placement program, I was a communications intern, and my manager there, she had experience in HR. And so she connected me with some of the people that she worked with. So through networking, I found that HR was something that I would be interested in. And then again, they got me into a position as a National Geographic campus ambassador, which helped me get an HR internship. And then through networking at my job there, I found that there's not only internal HR, but you could also do it from the consulting side as well. So when I got back to school, I started researching rotational programs and consulting jobs in HR, which brought me to PwC. And then through there, I called and networked with people who currently worked at the company to find out if that was actually the way that I wanted to go, the culture that I wanted to be a part of, what was the work-life balance, what the typical day was like. And that's when I was able to decide that that's the direction I wanted to go in.
Homer or Omer, sorry, or Gregory, any comments on how you landed in your role?
Yeah, I can go. So I actually came in pre-med, switched to second year. And so my goal was essentially to find a firm that had a nice combination of the two. And thankfully, a friend of mine introduced me to BRG. And following my learning about BRG, I actually went through a similar process to Adrienne when it came to reaching out to alumni, just to get a feel for the work, a feel for the people, and just like a feel for the day-to-day and the work-life balance itself. And then I actually went through a very lengthy process with Jen Jones, just trying to figure out my resume, figure out cover letters, just trying to get a better understanding of, what it is I should be doing to try and land this job, because I was a first generation college student from my family. So just essentially I had no knowledge of what exactly I should be doing to try and land this type of job. She was an absolute process.
Awesome. Yeah. So I go next. I kind of similar to Greg. I kind of looked at it more of a combination of what my interests were and what I was studying at UV at the time. I want to kind of mix the economics and the international relations kind of background into whatever I could do kind of moving forward. So I actually, straight out of college, I just kind of, it was much more straightforward. I just basically looked at what businesses were open in kind of the banking industry. And it seemed to be, there's an international financial advisor office open in Merrill, a position as a business analyst. So I basically just applied, and I think with the combination of my background, and it worked out very well. And I was able to kind of get that position. So it was a bit more straightforward, but it's worked out so far.
That's awesome. Just hearing about how you all found out about your roles, it seems like there was a lot of networking done, career prep, looking at resumes, getting all of that right, which is good stuff. But then you get in your role and you're like, what do you actually do? So, Omer, I know you mentioned you applied to, you were thinking about banking, but exactly what does that mean? And in your role today, I believe you said wealth management at Morgan Stanley. What are you doing? Adrienne and Gregory, I would pose the same question to you to help help everyone understand exactly what you would expect to do when you get into a role like that.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good question. So I can kind of give an answer in kind of three steps. What we do at a kind of a pretty high level is for the first kind of one of our first kind of roles, I guess, within the bank, we look at the competitive landscape and kind of look at kind of competitive reports on how the wealth management industry is doing and also how our competitors are doing, because obviously that's kind of a benchmark as to what we need to improve on or what we may be lagging, falling behind in. Secondly, the way I like to explain it, at least, we're kind of work as an internal consulting group where most of our clients, kind of quote unquote, are executives and different lines of businesses of the bank. So we work a lot, basically one-on-one with them to work on strategic initiatives. To kind of, it could really be anything. It could be around products, could be around personnel, could be around just kind of understanding where we are and where there might be gaps and limitations when we're in the processes of the bank. And then more of a kind of our overarching role is around kind of strategic initiatives for the bank as a whole and kind of working with the board of directors to make sure that our kind of strategic focus and kind of remaining a leader in the industry is kind of at the forefront of whatever we do. So it's kind of our role.
I can jump in. For me, I started on the rewards and well-being team with the concentration in compensation, tax, and accounting. And a typical day there would be, we would look at payroll, we would look at benefit plans, we would look at employee handbooks and compare it to the laws and regulations in that state, and then write up a report to make sure that they are compliant with the laws, that there's no risks, and that there's no chance that they're going to get sued. And then we will write up that report and then present it out. And then after I was working with the rewards and well-being team, I actually moved to another team called Deals Delivering Value. And on that team, what I'm currently doing is portfolio and project management for a client's human resources planning and strategy team. So right now, what that means is that we help the HR function decide on the direction of their strategy, taking into consideration the goals that they want to accomplish given the current state of the business and of the world. And then we decide on the key initiatives that they want to launch that year, and then what sub-projects would fall within these initiatives in order to help them achieve those goals. And then once we have that portfolio of projects and work that's aligned to the strategy, then we track metrics. So determining if they're at risk, if they're on track, what are the impacts to the audience, and if it was successful, and if we should continue to do that work year after year.
So my work with the healthcare analytics practice was a bit of a mixed bag, but I did the majority of it was data analysis focused. We would work with Fortune 500 firms when it came to damages assessments, risk assessments, analysis, and essentially it came to making sure that company is not, a complete LA company B through various contract analyses and making sure that their pricing was fair. Risk analysis is similar, except it was more geared towards making sure companies' procedures and processes were, in line with government regulations. And exposure analyses were more confirming whether or not a product that a company might be producing was, harmful to consumers, or was something that, result in a very large court lawsuit, 40 years down the line, depending on the people that, consume the product. But more recently, my work with our healthcare transaction strategy team is more geared toward market forecasting for various healthcare industries, and just confirming whether or not it's an area of growth for someone to, or a various private equity firm to go into and purchase a firm there.
Got it. Very interesting. And I mean, HR consulting, Adrienne, just me having a business of myself, the HR landscape is very tough. You think it's just hiring people, but it's like so many rules and laws around what you can and should and shouldn't do. And you want to make sure you're doing your best for your employees. So all of these jobs really have like a tangible impact on the businesses, that you're working for. When you think about your UVA degree, can you discuss how it's helped you, throughout your career so far? Gregory, I know you mentioned that you were actually econ and that you were doing pre-med. So it sounds like those two together kind of work perfectly for something like healthcare consulting. So can you talk a little bit more about how your degree has helped you with your, career thus far?
Yeah. So like you mentioned, I was econ and pre-med, and that's helped me immensely simply because of the work that I'm currently doing. Consulting is a very broad industry, and I would say a lot of what I learned in economics was a huge help to that, because I was able to get such a broad width of knowledge. During my time at UVA, I was able to come in with a background that helped me initially assess what type of analysis for a project. And then the pre-med also helped me when it came to more or less getting a good understanding of care in general and what exactly I would need to be doing for these various clients. Like I mentioned, some of the clients were healthcare firms, but sometimes it's a manufacturer, sometimes it's a wholesaler, sometimes it's an insurance firm. So just those two things combined, like the econ and pre-med, definitely gave me a good background when it came into learning and understanding what I was getting into beforehand. And stats, like I mentioned earlier, kind of gave me that data, the actual work that I would be doing on a day-to-day basis.
Omer, Adrienne, any insights on how your degree has helped you thus far?
I think econ specifically has helped me in consulting, because a lot of consulting is doing research and also looking at data and coming up with conclusions from the data, and creating visualizations and being able to tell a story and present it out to the client in a way that that makes sense and that matters to them. And I feel like econ puts a lot of emphasis on data, and I think that's something that has helped me in my actual job. And I also think just UVA as a whole, especially in the College of Arts and Sciences, they make you jump around with a bunch of different kinds of coursework, which is very similar to the consulting world, where you could work with technology, you could work with media, you could work with medical companies, insurance companies, and you have to be able to adapt to the different language and the business acumen that they use, which I think the liberal arts degree has helped me with.
That's all good. That's great. Omer, did you have something to add?
Yeah, just quickly, I think I completely agree with what Greg and Adrienne are saying. I think that obviously kind of goes without saying, the econ and kind of, a finance major, they obviously help in most industries. But I would say also something that I took away a lot when I'm reflecting back on how, my time at kind of UVA helped me. A lot of it was on critical thinking, and something that I found is one of the most important things in my role right now. Not only just understanding how to absorb information that you're learning. Obviously, it's all useful, but kind of being able to apply in different situations, because obviously, at least in my role, we work on a whole host of different kind of initiatives and projects that kind of come up out of the blue, and sometimes that aren't really aligned to what your background is. So understanding how to kind of use whatever you've learned so far and to experience through studying whatever it is and applying to that situation, I think has been the biggest help. And I think that the economics market does a really great job of doing that.
And that's a good segue into my next question, because I was going to ask, we have second years and third years on the call. If you think back to your second year and third year and, to what you're doing now, what skills do you think you will be working on at this time, in school to get that job that you have today or that dream job that you want to graduate? You can talk about technical skills and soft skills that you think were important to have.
I would say public speaking is an absolute must. Just being able to concretely describe essentially concretely describe the story that you want to tell to a client or just an interviewer is absolutely a must for the future in general. When it comes to soft skills, I'd also say just critical thinking, like Homer mentioned again, being able to kind of process information and get a good understanding of what it is you're trying to do or what it is you are someone else. Is very important. Personally, for me, pool, be Excel, more coding, or which is definitely like that unhelp, because it's something that can open a lot of doors for you in a lot of different fields.
I would completely agree about, wait, can I jump in right now? I can't tell. Right?
Yeah.
Sorry, the skills I mentioned were on in SQL. Not all of them, but just one is.
Adrienne, I think you can jump in if you want.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I would piggyback off of the presentation skills. The majority of the time that I spend on my job is making PowerPoint presentations. And I think I wish that I took it a little bit more seriously in school or even put myself in those positions to make more presentations and stand up and present to an audience. Outside of that, the main technical skills I use on a day-to-day basis is Excel, Google Sheets, Google Slides, and then they also ask for Tableau and Alteryx as well. And I think as a second year, as a third year, I would have definitely spent more time learning Excel and using Tableau and Alteryx on my own time outside of school. And I think that would have helped ease my transition into the working world.
Yeah, and I'll kind of wrap up a little bit, but I mean, to be completely candid, my second and third year, I was pretty lost as far as, what I needed to do and what my my avenues were, I guess, to find a position. But I would say something that I definitely tried to kind of do earlier on is network and kind of use whatever organization or kind of employee network or kind of student network, whatever I could to kind of just find a connection into something that I might kind of be interested in. Because obviously I had direction as far as what I would like to kind of move into in the future, but I didn't really know or have access to kind of a route or a pipeline into that. So I would say just, everyone kind of covered the basis, but I think networking is obviously a pretty huge thing.
All those are really, I would plus one to every skill that you mentioned. Getting into, the interview process, I think a lot of people are, interviewing, preparing for interviews. How did you prepare for the interview process with your employer, and exactly how did you go, and how did it go? And, how many jobs did you apply to or interview, for before you ended up securing your role? Funny story for me, when I was at UVA, one of my first big interviews for an internship was with P&G. And after that interview, which I thought I did well in, they take you to get a hot dog in Cincinnati, and my heel broke walking to get the hot dog. And I was so sad. I thought that my interview was over. I would never get a job. And I didn't get that role, but 2 or 3 weeks later, I interviewed for JP Morgan and got that role. So it wasn't the end of the world, but I had to do a few interviews. Do you have any stories about the interviews that you've done so far and how you prepared for the process?
I can kind of start it off. I guess in my first role, as I said, I kind of just applied online. So a fair amount of my process was more just understanding what I guess the bank initiatives were and kind of what that one of those things we're kind of looking at industry reports and just understanding what are they doing currently, what are they focused on, especially in the wealth management space. And I would say that I personally, I feel like I've always felt good going to an interview, but then after the interview, I never really felt good afterwards. But even if I did or did not get the role, but I would say, I mean, definitely number one for me is looking kind of research, understand what the role is, understand how it applies, understand also how you fit into that role, and how you can bring your background into and fit and bring value into that role. I think that's one of the most important things that stands out with different candidates is how has your past experience, and not to be completely aligned, but how have your past experiences helped you get to where you are right now, and how could it help you in the future, and kind of, I don't know, at the same time help the team that you're planning on joining. So.
My process was actually a lot faster than I thought. I started looking for jobs the August of my fourth year. And then by the time it was October, I had landed this job. The process itself, I was looking on LinkedIn, looking on Handshake, looking on LinkedIn, typing in HR, typing in consulting, and just seeing what popped up. And then going from LinkedIn to the actual company site to apply. And then once I actually got to the interview round, I would try to see if I knew anyone who worked there, anyone's sister, friend who worked there. And then for PwC in particular, one of my friend's sisters worked there. And I called her and asked her what the interview process was like for her, what I should expect, what the day-to-day was like. That way I could just come to the interview completely prepared. And the actual interview itself was, the first round was really just getting to know me, and me asking a lot of questions to the partner that I was interviewing with. So that's something that I think could help you in general, is if you prepare questions to ask during an interview, because I wasn't prepared for that part of it. And then the second part was a behavioral interview, which I think UVA has a lot of resources when it comes to preparing for behavioral interviews. You can do mock interviews. There's also resources on what type of behavioral questions they ask. So I think just running through the type of behavioral questions and coming up with stories and using, I believe it's called the STAR method, I think helped me in preparing for that part.
Can you hear me all right? I know there were some audio issues. All good?
Yeah,
All
I hear you.
right. So yeah, definitely my number one piece of advice is networking with alumni for sure. You never know, who can get you in the door somewhere. I hate saying it, but nepotism is a very real thing that exists in this world. So it's going to be there regardless of whether or not you use it. So I recommend you use it. You never know who can just out of nowhere say, hey, my manager was looking to hire somebody. Poof, you're in there without even going through like the normal avenues or routes. It's just you had a conversation with somebody, they think you're a good fit, and you're in there. Going through the normal routes also, people can give you a huge amount of advice, or might just end up giving you the exact questions you're going to be asked in the interview. Who knows? But at the end of the day, you want to talk to alumni. You want to get a feel for the job. You want to get a feel for, what type of questions are going to be asked during the interview. Some people might even be able to tell you who your interviews are and give you tips just in general of like how to speak have or what they might be interested in. Just kind of get even better when you walk into an interview. Definitely outside of research, getting understanding of the company, like Homer said, just being able to there and ask questions like Adrienne said, just having like that proper understanding that you walk in there and what the job is, want from a candidate that's applying, and being able to, speak on your resume and say what you've done in the past to the job that you're applying.
All very, very good advice on networking.
Can I also quickly add something I forgot to say? For consulting, I think I didn't have to do this, but now they implemented at PwC case interviews. And I think to prepare for a consulting interview, you have to practice case. And UVA also does mock case interviews. And they also do mock case interviews with companies that you're trying to interview with. So that's also something I would keep in mind.
I was gonna say the same. That's kind of why I never feel good going out of interview because I can't interview section. But yeah,
I
You
would
never know
say
if that alumni already has the answers for you.
this is true. You can definitely practice for case interviews. I actually find some, I find them to be a little bit better because you can actually prepare versus some other interviews where you don't know what they're going to ask from a behavioral side. So I will echo everything everyone just said. The networking does not stop. Even when you are out of school, you're networking for life. Even with my business, we're fundraising right now, and a big part of that is networking. So for those who may not be comfortable with networking, and I'll ask two more quick questions and then let's open it up for Q&A. If you guys can put your messages or your questions in the chat, that would be great. If we don't see any in the chat, I'll just ask you to come off mute when the Q&A time comes. So for networking, just really quickly on that, since we've touched on it already, any tips for people who might be a little bit timid or not used to reaching out for people, knowing that they might, want something in return? I know that's a struggle for many, people who aren't familiar with networking, and it might feel a little bit unnatural. Any, tips to help?
Something that helped me is to come to the conversation with questions already. I think it's kind of scary when you don't know what you're going to say, but if I have a list of what I want to talk about and make a long list, so just in case the time runs over. But that's something that helped me just to prepare, and also do research on who you're talking to before you actually start talking to them. That way you have something to connect on, you have something to ask them about. That's a personal question that has to do with them, and that way they can start feeling comfortable and start wanting to connect with you.
Yeah, and it can be just something as simple as, hey, we're both econ majors. I'm graduating next year. Do you have 15 minutes to chat about the work you're currently doing? It doesn't have to be like a big formal invite. It can be just a quick little 15-minute coffee chat or video chat that you have with somebody. And I would advise against outright asking if they have any job openings. I would just have like a casual chat with them just to kind of introduce yourself, get a feel for like the work that they do, and see if it's something that interests you. But again, it can be very casual, just quick 15-minute chat with somebody.
I think this kind of leads into what Adrienne was saying, but I think the coming with questions, I think, is definitely a standout feature from candidates that I think end up getting whatever role they're looking for, because it shows interest. It shows that you're kind of passionate about what they may be doing. And I think that also a little tidbit that I got when starting my interview process was, if the interviewer has been speaking more than you have, you probably don't run the interview, because the more you can have someone to speak about themselves, the more they end up liking you. That's just psychology, but definitely kind of come with questions, and also just be inquisitive. Obviously, it's hard when you're timid. You don't really, it's kind of intimidating a little bit to be kind of interviewing at whatever company you're kind of looking at, and kind of the prospect of not getting it or getting it, it's daunting, obviously. But I would say if you can just express, because everyone has a story. If you can just kind of relay that to why you're kind of looking at that role, because everyone has a why, right? And you can just talk about that and kind of, again, practice that on your own and really understand introspectively why you want this role, and then try to communicate that and build a story around that. I think that'll ease a lot of your kind of struggles, I guess.
All very, very helpful tips. I used to stress about writing those networking emails, and I think the combination of what everyone said is right. If you just, tell them why you're reaching out and have a good list of questions that can kind of, make you feel prepared when you're having these conversations. So all good, very good recommendation. So the last question I'll have really quick before we open up to Q&A. You're in your role today. How do you see, this job advancing your career? What is the ultimate end goal or the big picture that you would like to, get to when you think about your career trajectory? I know that's a big question, but it's one that a lot of people have to think about and answer. So whoever wants to go first can kick it off.
I can start us off a little bit. I've been thinking about this a little bit as well. it's always very tough. But I would say, just to kind of keep it a little simple, it's something, and I think the word that I'm going to use is a bit overused, but I think something that you're passionate about. Something that maybe not as passionate, more something that you find yourself that will kind of get you interested for a long time. Something that you think that you can really put, your 100% effort into and not really feel like you're being drained of what you're doing. For me, I think, and I'll just be kind of honest, I think that something that I really enjoy looking into is around venture capital, specifically around kind of giving capital to minority-owned funds and kind of startups and early stage and basically companies. So basically kind of Black individuals and other people of color and women-led. I think that's something that'd be very interesting for me in the future. And I think that in the role that I'm doing right now, I'm actually doing work with these venture capital funds as we speak now. So I think that's kind of just a great gateway to get me into that industry, and really just applying whatever you kind of do, and kind of really just not being afraid to kind of challenge yourself and go into areas that you don't, even though you don't think you might do well in. If it's something that's interesting of yours, you'll get the hang of it. And as long as you put the effort in, put the time in, I think you'll be able to kind of find what you really want to get out of it.
Yeah, being so new to the workforce, I honestly struggle with this question. I have no idea where I want to take my career, quite honestly. But the great thing about consulting is that for someone like me who doesn't know where they see themselves in 5 years' time, it's a perfect opportunity to figure that out, because you are working with so many different companies, and seeing how they run, and seeing their day to day, and getting exposure into different companies, different types of work. And I think that's helped me at least narrow it down to the technology and media industry. So I think I'll be able to continue to narrow it down, but right now I'm thinking about tech and media and working on HR strategy there. And as I continue to rotate through different companies, I will have a better view on where I want to take it.
So to kind of both comments, actually, Adrienne mentioned consulting. There's a time to do during your time in that insight analysis on the lines something about. One thing I've noticed with my work is the different races I've taken more of a personal interest in, but haven't really been able to find somewhere that is, I guess, where the two things kind of align is the best way to put it. So I'm currently really enjoying the work that I'm doing now, but is it something that I expect to be doing 10 years down the line? We'll see.
All good. I think the theme throughout every answer is, right out of school, you may not be in the role that you're going to be in forever. Most of the time it's a stepping stone into VC or into tech or whatever that final, places that you want to go. And people, 10 years out of school are still always finding new things to work on and do, because your interests change over time. So I think that's a very good way to kind of end the questions that I have. If there are any other questions, please feel free to come, off mute and ask, or if you don't want to come off mute, you can, throw it into the chat. Okay, so I do have one that I can start off with. So for this one, I spoke with a student recently who shared her informational interview experience, where she asked an alum what their comp was for their job. The alum replied that this was an unprofessional question. How many students learn about comp and potential income directly from people in the jobs? It's a good question.
This is a question for us, correct? Okay, yeah. I'm still figuring out what the comp is, to be honest with you. I I think part of it was kind of doing research before I got the job, and there are plenty of sites like Glassdoor, a few other ones that give you some insight on what the role, kind of, I guess, base or and bonus, what that might look like. I think that the number is changing. I'm not sure Adrienne knows better than me. She's, I see she works with HR, but I think there's a constant conflict between some of the workers and HR around what, some basically seeing what the comp may be, but obviously, there's reasons for that. But I personally have never been asked directly what the comp looks like, but I think that it's becoming a bit more normalized. I think people have realized the trend right now is there's been a lot of flux. The people have been in flux as far as like what jobs they want, and there's a bit more flexibility in what you can and can't do, and kind of what's available and out there. So I would say, I mean, obviously do your research beforehand, but obviously something that you're not, that you don't like, I guess, or something that you think you should be, everyone's, you know your worth, so there's definitely opportunity that's out there that I think you'll be satisfied with. So I would say maybe don't focus on the comp as much, because there'll be an opportunity that'll come around. I think that it'll be a combination of what you want to do and what you want to get paid. So yeah.
Yeah, the comp question, I wouldn't ask someone directly how much they're making, especially in an informational interview. Maybe, if you you're at the final stages of an interview and you're speaking with a recruiter, that's a good time to ask about comp. To go off of what Omer said, there are a lot of resources out there that will help you determine what your comp should be. There's Glassdoor. The career office at UVA should have comparables for students that are in that role or have just graduated. And you go to them and you ask, oh, well, I got an offer, or they're thinking about giving me XYZ. How does this compare? And if you ever need to negotiate, then you have some true data points about how you know you should be paid versus, what was offered. And that's usually the best way to go into a conversation versus, asking someone directly what they're making. That's a good question, because comp is at the top of everyone's mind when you get a job. Any other, questions from anyone in the group today?
Marshay, I actually have a question piggybacking off of that point. Do any of you have advice on negotiating? I'm not sure if any of you guys negotiated to get into your current roles or previous roles, but if you have any advice on like the negotiating process, that'd be really helpful.
I guess the question is, did anyone dare to negotiate?
I can take a little stab at this. I'm interested to see what Adrienne has to say, because she's silent, but I want to know what's going on there. But I would say it's similar to kind of, I guess, our previous answer, but I would say negotiation takes a lot of research and understanding what you think, the value of what your work should be. And to that extent, you need to basically, this kind of goes regardless, but you should, I think, be kind of having a bit of a kind of tracking of what you've done so far and what you provide to the team, kind of your value add, basically. And then to that point, basically being able to kind of quantify that into a number or a range, whatever is easiest. And then basically communicating that to whoever your higher up is. Because at the end of the day, they most likely want to keep you, but there needs to be a valid reason for them to be able to communicate to someone else why they should be paying someone a higher salary, or So I'd say just understand what your value add is, and be able to communicate that, and do some research as to what is a proper salary to ask for.
Yeah,
any other answer.
I completely agree. Personally, I've never negotiated. This is my first job, and PwC has a specific cohort model, but in general, I completely agree. I think a good practice that I've started doing is having a brag book. So writing down any wins that I have, anything that I think I went above and beyond, any good feedback that I've gotten, and also with research of knowing like what type of pay is that at competitive companies. I think if you take those two together, you could make a good case. And when I was in undergrad, although I didn't negotiate, I did work with Jen, and she has a good course on negotiating during a interview or during a job offer.
So one nice thing, can everyone hear me all right? I know I've been having audio issues, I apologize. Thing that never hurts to have in hand is another offer letter. Essentially just being able to say, hey, you guys are offering me 50K, this company's offering me 60, what can we do here? Essentially is not a bad thing to have in hand. I wouldn't throw it in their faces, but I would definitely, you know, maybe offhandedly mention that you have the opportunity to have a hire for another firm. Definitely can help with those negotiations when you're trying to say, hey, I think the value that I add to your company is going to be worth the amount that this company thinks it'll be worth.
Yeah, and I'll end it on, I mean, that's a very good point. If you have multiple offers, it's a great time to negotiate. There's an art and science to it. You don't want to be boastful, like, I got this offer, you must give me this amount. And you also don't want to make up, that you got an offer, because I have seen that done too. I think negotiating actually is not that taboo anymore. Even if it is your first time out of undergrad, a lot of companies expect you to negotiate. We're actually in a pretty hot job market right now, which is good for you all. So, when you think about negotiation, there's not just salary. A lot of times you are getting a bonus or a relocation package when you start a new role. And that is also a place where you can negotiate if a company doesn't want to move on salary. So those are just my tidbits, but all very good, good stuff. I think I have one more question that I saw in the chat. How important has mentorship been in your career time at UVA?
I mean, for me, mentorship got me my job. My manager at the internship program that I was working on, she kind of took me under her wing and showed me the ropes of HR, gave me contacts of people that I should reach out to, the skills that I needed to develop. She helped me think about my weaknesses and where I needed to work on within my third year, so I'd be ready when fourth year came around. And I think also outside of UVA, once you get into your job, mentorship doesn't stop. One of the best parts about PwC is that they give you a coach, they give you a relationship lead, and then you can also go out and pick mentors of your own. And they're the ones that are going to vouch for you, and they're the ones that are going to bring you with them on different projects and show you different experiences. Having a mentor is the whole reason why I got brought from the team that I was on to a team that I feel like suits my skills and my interests. And so I feel like as my career progresses, it is important to have a mentor there with me.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I don't think I can call it a mentor, but when I was at UVA, I really leveraged the alumni network that I had access to through either organizations or basically parties that I was kind of a part of. And it's just really helpful, as also alluding to what Greg said previously, to kind of have a friend kind of give you some information that you obviously never know because you're not in that role just yet. But just giving you tips, advice, and kind of a little bit kind of calming your nerves a little bit, because obviously there's a lot of the unknown that obviously you're kind of walking into as a first kind of applicant, a first year applicant. So I mean, really just kind of obviously having a mentor is great, and but using those alumni and the connection that you've made, because obviously it's easier to approach them than it might be to approach someone that's kind of the cold call or just email someone out of the blue. And then I was again what Adrienne was saying, basically it really doesn't stop after college. I was fortunate enough to have my first boss help me kind of find the role that I'm in now. And he's been helping me out kind of along the way, kind of navigate, because the career world is a whole different animal in itself. So kind of having a helping hand and trying to find that outlet that you can kind of speak to candidly is a great addition.
So yeah, I mean, that's one of the great things about UVA is that there are so many different ways for you to gain a mentor, even if it's not through a formal mentorship program. Just all the different clubs, groups, and organizations and CIOs that UVA can find people that have similar interests as you, same field as you, that might have a little more experience, alumni who have already graduated that are in that same field that you're interested in going. And a great avenue. You can just quickly help me out with job interview. VA. I think both of their firms as well as mine have a very mentorship program help you, especially when you first get into the job market and get into your first job, which helps with kind of learning the ropes, getting the feel for the work they're going to be doing on a day-to-day basis. I'm personally thankful to be someone's mentor, or I guess we call it a buddy program at BRG, but it's a really great way for people to kind of act to the company, so give back to UVA itself, and we're able to have the opportunity to mentor undergrads.
Awesome. Great. Yeah, mentors play a role in your experience while you're in school, and also you all have each mentioned while you're actually in your career too. So it seems like there can be a formal mentor buddy program with your job, or you just find a senior person or a peer that you really connect with, and they become an informal mentor. So there are many ways about it. We have time for one more question. I don't know if anyone wants to come off mute and end it for us. So I'll wait to see if anyone wants to ask another question. Okay, we've got a quiet bunch. Well, we'll end with this. Give one piece of advice, knowing where people on this call are at their journey in UVA right now. One piece of advice that you would suggest they take away from this panel as they prepare for their career journey. Omer, let's start with you.
Yeah, thank you. I would say the thing that's helped me the most, even if it's a role that I didn't feel like I was a perfect fit for, or even a strong fit for, was to really, and this kind of goes for everyone that's at UVA right now, understand what you look back at what you've done, kind of take a little skim of your resume, and see how it all ties together. Because there's going to be a pattern there. There's going to be something that there's going to be in your resume or in whatever you're interested in. You'll be able to find your strengths. And the more you can understand what those strengths are and how they apply to you and how they can apply to the job, the stronger you'll be as a candidate. And obviously technical skills are a big addition to that, but I would say understanding your why and being able to answer that pretty thoroughly will get you very far. Thanks.
For me, I would tell my younger self to not ignore technical skills. That's something that I wish I had when I started and that I didn't have to get on the job. It's just something that I completely ignored while I was in undergrad. So that's definitely something that I would tell myself. And then advice going into the working world is that to ask so many questions and really understand what they're asking of you, and not just what they're asking of you, but the why behind the work that you're doing. Everything will come together so much clearer, and you can do better work if you understand not just the mindless tasks or what they're giving you to do, but why they're doing it, what that means for the business, what that means for the company, is something that I would tell myself starting a year ago.
When referring to the job search process, I would definitely say networking by and large. I wish I could have told my second year self to start networking a lot earlier. You just have no idea how many people are out there, how much advice they're willing to give, how much help they're willing to give when it comes to just the sheer number of jobs that you'll find through other people that you'll never find on a job site is honestly almost infinite, as well as the advice that they can give. I mean, there's just so much of UVA has such a great alumni network. I just reach out, send that email, send that LinkedIn message, just email somebody, ask them for a quick chat for like 15 minutes. Like they might not even work in the same industry that you want to enter. They might not, even be the same major as you, someone who is that's trying to hire you. So just definitely network, reach out to people and just build your network.
Awesome. All really good stuff. This was an amazing panel. Can we talk about like the power of the UVA network? I'll be walking down in like my Who's t-shirt and I'll get a honk when I'm like walking down the street in New York. So I love UVA. They've done a lot for me, and it seems like a lot of people, on this panel in our career. So this was great. Thank you all for, participating. Chloe, I'll hand it off to you, so we know where to, go next. Thank you, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. That was great. I was jotting down notes the entire time. So thank you all for all of that wonderful advice. And thank you again, Marshay, for leading this panel.